As I rise, I guess I begin by wondering about the purpose of the Prime Minister's statement. We've heard a lot of rhetoric from the other side about vision and so on. I have to say I naively perhaps thought that it would contain some sort of vision and perhaps a work program aligned to that vision, but instead I think typically from that Prime Minister we've got a lot of political opportunism, political rhetoric, the usual spin, probably tested on focus groups. And it does lack vision, actually. It lacks specifics, it lacks empathy, and it certainly lacks ambition. And I also have to say, I thought that perhaps, given the appallingly high levels of unemployment in this country that continue to rise and disproportionately affect some groups, Māori, Pacific, young people, that perhaps there'd be some acknowledgement of the human cost of unemployment. And in fact, I think it was behoving on the Prime Minister to actually recognise that unemployment is about people. It's about people without jobs, people who are struggling to make ends meet. And there was no empathy from Mr Key, and there were no concrete plans in that speech to assist unemployed New Zealanders. And I just want to compare this to President Obama's State of the Nation speech, and I'm going to quote from that. If you haven't been personally affected by this recession, you probably know someone who has, a friend, a neighbour, a member of your family. You don't need to hear another list of statistics to know our economy is in crisis, because you live it every day. It is the worry you wake up with and the source of sleeplessness. It is the job you thought you'd retire from but now have lost, the business you'd built your dreams upon that's now hanging by a thread, the college acceptance letter your child had to put back in the envelope. The impact of this recession is real, and it is everywhere. President Obama went on to state that his agenda starts with jobs. There was nothing like that in the speech of the New Zealand Prime Minister. Unlike countries like Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada, where there's been a real focus on stimulus packages that create and save jobs, investment in people through skills and other training opportunities. Nothing. I work in the Māori electorate in Auckland, and I talk to people all of the time, and in fact I talk to people in Glen Innes, the people that Mr Peachy was referring to earlier. I talk to people in the Panmure Market, on the streets of Onehunga, in my office. People are struggling. They've lost their jobs. They've lost hours of work. They've had small or no pay increases. 56% of people last year did not have a pay increase. This government, of course, responded very generously by lifting the minimum wage by 25 cents. Well, you ask Aucklanders about that. 25 cents. Even the poll in the New Zealand Herald overwhelmingly showed that Aucklanders believe the minimum wage needs to be $15 an hour because people know you cannot live on the minimum wage. So people are struggling. And what have they got to look forward to? Well, there's rises in ACC levies, of course, very likely an increase to GST, which will disproportionately hit those on low income. And for those across the other side of the House who maybe don't bother to do this, I'd suggest that you talk to the budget advisors in your area. I'd suggest you go and talk to those good volunteers at the Citizens Advice Bureaus. Talk to some church ministers. They will reinforce everything I have just said. It is true. The PM's speech talked about a gap between income in Australia and New Zealand. Well, I ask the question, when was that gap created? That gap in wages, in GDP per capita, was actually a gap created under the last national government. And in fact, interestingly enough, that government over there is paying Dr Brash to come back with the same tired old policies that created that gap. You say you're not going to bother using them, but you're still paying him to keep trolling it out. So what a waste of money. Absolutely. I can think of better things to use it for, that's for sure. There are other gaps we need to focus on as well. And first and foremost is the gap between rich and poor in New Zealand. And I was lucky enough the other day to be at the launch of the Salvation Army State of the Nation Road to Recovery report in Royal Oak in the Māori electorate. And in that report, this comment was made: there is no denying that the recession is taking a social toll. Unemployment is at a 5-year high. Gains made over the last 5 years in reducing child poverty have probably been lost. and there are signs of a widening income gap between the well-paid and the poorly paid. Is there any recognition of that in the Prime Minister's speech? Well, no, the answer is none at all. Increasingly, globally, there is a recognition that fairer societies are more successful societies. And in the past, New Zealand has been held up as a model of a fair society. Unfair societies are not sustainable. The cost to the health system, the prison system, the cost to victims of crime. Recently, in fact today, the Human Rights Commission were quoted about the costs of the very high unemployment being faced by young Māori and Pacifica people. Instead, this government is building on the inequalities that they've already put in place. The cuts to adult and community education while funding private schools. Tax cuts to the rich, followed by soon more tax cuts to the rich. Mr Key in his speech did make a number of comments about lifting our economic performance. The word productivity is one that this government is good at mentioning, but very poor in doing anything about. Where is the plan around industry and regional economic development? Where is the recognition of the need to lift the quality of our workplaces, the wage rates, the work conditions, the quality of interaction, the opportunity for people to have a say? Productive employment relations, where's that? This government sees workers and their rights as costs to be reduced. And you only have to look at the double speak in the Prime Minister's statement. Under the section Better Regulation, we have looking at whether labour laws are imposing excessive costs on the country and holding back opportunities to create jobs. Holidays and personal grievances are of course specifically mentioned, but we also know that the Minister of Labour is looking at things like union access to workplaces and collective bargaining. Remember, and I ask the people of New Zealand to remember what all of that kind of speak meant last time there was a national government in place, the very same time that the gap in income between Australia and New Zealand grew so dramatically. The thing that I really find very, very upsetting and disheartening for our country is that skills are only mentioned once in passing in the Prime Minister's speech and twice in his statement. This is one of the most appalling aspects of this government's performance. They do not understand the importance of lifelong learning, that 80% of the workforce of 10 years' time are already in the workforce, that investing in skills is critical to lifting productivity and innovation, that investing in skills can be used to lift literacy, an issue the government is supposedly so concerned about, and an issue that can help parents with their children's literacy and learning needs. This is appalling. The lack of concentration on this issue is just mind-boggling. We cannot afford to not invest in our people, in our children, our communities and our economy. We have major skills deficits. Technical and literacy skills are two of the key areas. A government with some vision would invest substantial resources in training people in order to upskill our workforce. Ideas like paying unemployed people to train, working with businesses to help them retain workers while they're being upskilled. We would be positioned to transform our economy at a time when we are perhaps coming out of the recession. The benefits apply to the individual, to their family, their community, their workplace, our society and our economy. And yet, this government sits on its hands. It is just unbelievable that we have fallen so far behind the rest of the world in this regard. So, in this area, the government is not only lacking in ambition and vision, but is also very arrogant. There was indeed some very good work done by the previous Labor government. Schools Plus, the skills strategy, a comprehensive strategy agreed to by unions, business, government, industry, training, federation, everybody, failed to pick it up because it's something from Labor. Well, that's just arrogant in my opinion. The retraining allowance for those who've been made redundant or had been in their job for 5 years or more, and I could go on. I do want to, though, talk about listening to people because Mr Bennett talked about this is a government that listens. Well, I have to say he needs to come to Auckland and tell that to the people of Auckland, because one of the areas in the Prime Minister's statement is around Auckland's governance. What a shambles. Everybody I am speaking to from all walks of life is angry, is worried, is concerned about what is going to happen around the Auckland super city. We've been having meetings across Auckland, and let me tell you, people are concerned about the lies, the fact that they were told that the powers of the local local boards would
Sorry
be
to
his
interrupt
third
the
bill.
member, but her time has expired.